What do you say, everybody, and welcome into Monday Night Quarterback right here on Bama Insider, the Bama Insider YouTube channel. Like and subscribe. Hit the bell as you hang out with us here on a Monday night. We do this every single Monday after an Alabama game at 6 o'clock, and here we are for another Monday. Before I bring on Tony Tsoukalas, let me remind you that Monday Night Quarterback is presented by Westgate Luxury Condominiums. There they are, just absolutely gorgeous right there next to Bryant-Denny Stadium. It's a great time now to invest. You can buy units that are available in this brand new complex right next to the stadium, 200 feet away from Bryant-Denny Stadium. I mean, I'm talking about right across the street. And there are lots of advantages to it, including earning rental income, on-site hospitality team that handles owners' guest requests of all kinds, and access to world-class housekeeping and maintenance crews. There's a website and digital marketing services for you or your residents to maintain revenue and distribution. Just remember, WestgateAL.com for more information, or call 855-287-1318. And again, just steps away from Bryant-Denny Stadium, exclusive access to the Skygate Club for you and your friends, catered game days, and unparalleled service. Luxury condominiums with high-end finishes and appliances, plus more. And that's WestgateAL.com. All right, and we'll be there after the Alabama-Tennessee game for the Bama Insider post-game show. All right, here he is, the beat writer for Bama Insider, Tony Tsoukalas. Tony, you should get done your duties inside the stadium and just walk across the street and hang out with us.
Man, I wish it was that easy. I'd much rather be doing that than, being in the press box with, trying to pound away on articles and stuff. So, yeah, I'd rather be at Westgate. Trust me.
Well, you would, especially when they break out the food up there. Pretty good spreads on game day. Well, let's talk about Alabama. There's so much going on, a 49-9 victory over Mississippi State. And we'll start with the star players on offense and defense. You're talking about two guys who could potentially get a look for the Heisman Trophy. One guy that I feel like has a really good shot at it is Alabama quarterback Bryce Young. And then there's Will Anderson. Will Anderson Jr. has been tremendous as well on defense, and both of those guys had huge games against State.
Look, I'm going to start actually with Will Anderson Jr. because if there's ever a time for, Alabama to have a defensive Heisman candidate, it's got to be Will Anderson. He's the best player on the field every single time he steps on the field. He had 4 sacks. Alabama hasn't had that since Derek Thomas in 1988. And he's not quite Derek Thomas because nobody's Derek Thomas. It's kind of like comparing someone to Michael Jordan. But, I mean, he's right up there with one of the best defensive players I've seen at the college level. And he's fun to watch. And if he keeps up, last year we saw him kind of pick up the pace around this time. If he does that again this year and starts really racking up these, sack totals and definitely tackles for a loss, I think he already has like 15 tackles for a loss through 7 games. So if he can really add to those totals, I think he might be able to make a run at the Heisman. I mean, it's really tough for a defensive player to do that, but who knows, man? Especially if he had a big game against Georgia. I don't know, man. I'd want to see that. As for Bryce Young, he probably has a more realistic chance just because he's also putting up great numbers at the quarterback position. And let's face it, the Heisman the Heisman Trophy is a quarterback award. And Bryce Young is, consistently putting up great numbers. I know that they lost against Texas A&M, but he put up a career high passing yards in that game, comes back, throws for, about 350 and 4 touchdowns in this game. He was 7 for 7 on 3rd downs. So, I think that, you can't really ask much more from Bryce Young. You also saw him move the ball with his feet, which I know Alabama fans have been kind of calling for. So he really showed he can do it all. He's the real deal at quarterback as well. And so, maybe Alabama will have a Heisman contender on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, well, Nick Saban was asked about Will Anderson and his performance in the game and had this to say in today's press conferences. I'm going to play this and let's kind of go back to Will Anderson there. And I agree, both guys could very easily be Heisman Trophy contenders.
On every team. I think that there's 2 things about leadership, and I've talked about this before. You have to have people who are willing to take responsibility for leadership, which we have some players stepping up on our team to do that. But the other players on the team have to be willing to accept that leadership and respond to the standard that the leaders are trying to get everybody to aspire to. So I'm happy that that's starting to develop on this team. I think it's really critical to having a successful team that you have really positive, good leadership on your team.
And he's talking about Will Anderson. Remember last week at his press conferences, Will Anderson was asked about the team and the loss, and he was pretty frustrated. And then he went out and had a monster game. And Nick Saban felt like Will Anderson, I mean, it sounded like to me in that clip, he was pretty happy with Will Anderson's performance and leadership.
I mean, how could you not be? The guy is great at both. On the field, we just talked about all what he can offer and how much of a terror he is in a pass rush. But, he's a guy that really holds his teammates accountable. And he's only a sophomore, but he doesn't act like a sophomore. He acts like, maybe a senior. He's probably, in my opinion, probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest voice on that defense. And I think he's a player that, Alabama players really respond to. And, after the Florida game, they might have not responded as much to him. And I think that, he even called them out. He said that he didn't think that his teammates had really took him seriously. I think they definitely did take him seriously. And let's see if they can maintain that moving forward. But when you look at the energy that Will Anderson brings and the leadership, he's already bought into the process. There's a lot of talk on this Alabama team of maybe, players that haven't bought into the process, but Will Anderson's definitely not one of those. And I think he's going to be a good role model for everybody on the team, not even just the defense. I think, as a whole, you look at a guy like him and he really provides a leadership both on and off the field.
No doubt about it. Well, a couple other questions that Nick Saban was asked about today, kind of uncomfortable. Jai Hall tweeted after the game. Tony, you were the guy that wrote about that. The tweet was kind of cryptic, almost like he was going to transfer. And then we haven't seen a lot of Javon Baker as well. Nick Saban was asked about that today. Let's play those clips, and then I want to get your thoughts. As a matter of fact, you asked one of the questions to Coach Saban.
Being as they are.
Well, it is what it is. But, look, it still comes down to players creating value for themselves by what they do. I've said this before that, there's players that have talent, but they have to learn how to use it. And they have to use it in an effective way in the way they practice. It's up to the player to impress the coaches that they can be trusted to go in the game and do what they're supposed to do. So when players get frustrated, they sometimes don't respond the way they should in terms of their preparation and focusing on what they need to do to become a good player because they're so concerned about how much they're playing. So, if players are competitors, they probably will be frustrated that they're not playing. But it's how do you respond to that? What do you do to respond to that in a positive way that's going to help you improve your circumstances in the future?
All right, there he is talking about Jai Hall and his tweet, and it sounded like to me he was also kind of throwing a blanket out there on players that don't play a lot. With the transfer portal, obviously if guys aren't happy, they can get out of town pretty quick.
Yeah, and look, I think there's probably still there's got to be some frustration from Nick Saban here. This team just had a big win. They responded well following a loss. It seemed like everything was on a positive momentum. And then you have a player who, draws a negative out of that situation by doing everything that, against what Alabama preaches, right? It's all team first, process first. And you got a player who's, pouting it publicly over lack of playing time. And, that's got to be something that Nick Saban probably doesn't take lightly. He probably, doesn't like that moment. If you notice, sometimes when you mention these kind of things to Nick Saban, he'll mention the player by name. If you notice, he did not mention either Jai Hall or Javon Baker by name. I don't know if that's frustration. I don't know if that's, him, like you said, wanting to leave more of a blanket statement. But yeah, I think that you've heard from Nick Saban, you've heard some of the players. Players like Ajay Hall, they're going to have to buy in. Are they're going to end up transferring? But I think that's maybe at best a 50% success rate when players do transfer. So I mean, history would say that if Ajay Hall is kind of grit through it, you heard Bryce Young say there's a lot of walking testaments on this team to turn to in terms of players that have waited their turn. I mean, look at John Mechie, was somebody I asked about this after the game, and he said basically advised Ajay Hall to just kind of trust the process and keep on plugging away. Look at John Mechie. It's kind of a similar situation to Ajay Hall, a guy that had a big game in the 8A game his freshman year, didn't really do anything during his freshman year, and then broke out as a sophomore. I very much think that could be the case for Ajay Hall if he was to stay. He's definitely a player that's talented. You'd have to think that somebody like Jamison Williams is going to move on to the next level. Maybe John Mechie also moves on to the next level after this year. So there's going to be openings. And, I think if you just put yourself in that situation, you could really make a rise next season. So I think it comes down to patience and then just improving from a week to week basis and kind of seeing the big picture instead of just the instant picture.
Right. And kind of along the same line here is what Nick Saban said when you asked him about Javon Baker.
They're doing fine, but it's the same thing. Players do what they're supposed to do. They travel, they play, they contribute to the team. And that's every player's choice. Every player has a choice to do the things that they need to do to contribute to the team, and everybody's got to buy in. So, players that do that, travel, players that have issues with that, they're not really doing what they should do. I mean, that's our job as a coach to make sure that people are doing the right things. And if they're not doing the right things, there's consequences for that. There's consequences for that in life. There's consequences in that when you're in competitive sports.
Your thoughts?
Yeah, I just think that, when you look at Javon Baker, it's a guy that, hasn't really made any appearance. I don't think he's played since the game against Southern Miss. And that's an interesting game because he had 2 receptions for, I think, like 58 yards and a touchdown or something like that.
Right.
Is his best game against Southern Miss. And, he hasn't played since. And I think that, just like Nick Saban said, it probably has a lot to do with doing the right things off the field. There might be some things we don't see. And, maybe it's practice, maybe it's in the classroom, maybe it's just making good decisions. But those things all matter. And, I think, you kind of lose your opportunities when you don't prove to the coaching staff that you can be a reliable option. And sometimes being a reliable option is not just on the field. It's also, being reliable in practice and being reliable off the field as well. So a guy like Javon Baker, I mean, we've seen what he can do. We saw his catch against Southern Miss was great. And, he's a guy that can make some big plays. But if he doesn't get these things fixed, then, Alabama has other options. You look at Trayshawn Holden. He's kind of a guy that's quietly plugged away, and look at him now. He's got his first touchdown catch, had 2 big catches against Mississippi State, and looks to be a bigger part of the offense moving forward. And you just kind of see these guys that are doing that. They're the ones that are going to get the opportunity. You look at a guy like Ja'Cory Brooks. Well, he hasn't really made that much of a impact on offense, but he's been making a big impact on special teams. And so those are the kind of plays, that will lead to success later on. You build that momentum, you gain the coach's trust wherever you can, and then you take advantage of your time when you do get those opportunities on offense or defense or whatever you're playing.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Guys, as you watch Monday Night Quarterback, thumbs up, subscribe to the Bama Insider YouTube channel. We appreciate you guys so much for being part of what we do here, and that's covering Alabama each and every day. So hit the bell as you hang out with us, and our show's brought to you by Westgate Luxury Condominiums right there next to Bryant-Denny Stadium. Don't forget, tomorrow at 6 o'clock, Andrew Bone, our recruiting expert, with Trey Yanity tomorrow night. Not you, Tony, but Trey. And they'll talk about the latest in Alabama recruiting. Bone, of course, the best in the business at doing that. And you can follow Tony here and Bone and the rest of the gang at BamaInsider.com. All right, let's talk about Nick Saban some more. I mean, Nick Saban was asked in the press conference today about the situation in Tennessee. He really didn't want to get into that too much. And, of course, we're talking about the field being pelted with debris because the fans were upset about the fourth down play that didn't go their way. They didn't like Lane Kiffin, their former coach. There was a lot of frustration. And it was kind of an ugly scene. I mean, something that we don't hardly ever witness in college football for sure. And Nick Saban was asked about that. And Tony, what it did was it brought up something else, and that's fans rushing the field. And surprisingly enough, Nick Saban started talking about a bruise. And when he said that, it looked like he got hit by a softball on his arm. So let's take a look at that right now, and then we'll get your reaction.
Entertainment business. There's a lot of people that come to the games. They've got a lot of passion and excitement for what they do. Hopefully, as institutions and fans, will always do that in a positive way. I still got a big bruise on my arm here from, what happened after the Texas A&M game, and I can always just look at that as a reminder to what it feels like to be in that situation and motivate myself to try to do a better job with our players. That
was shocking.
Yeah, first of all, like Alabama by 60 next time they play Texas A&M, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you can't bruise Nick Saban and expect that not to be something that's a rallying point for Alabama. But there'll be plenty of motivation. I think it also, like as Nick Saban says, that little mark on his arm is going to be a constant reminder of a missed opportunity at Texas A&M. So I think that's just not that Nick Saban really needed that, but I think if a play goes bad in practice and he can look down and see that mark on his arm, it might just fire him up a little bit even more.
Hold on a second. Let me put it back up there and pause it just so we can look at it some more.
Yeah, it's about the size of a golf ball when you
see if I can get it back up there. Was it just 9-10? And it was like all of a sudden he starts talking about it, and I'm like, oh, I see it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely visible. If you go back and watch the video, we also have a picture of it on the site. It's about the size of a golf ball, and it's kind of a scary thing. I mean, let's not forget Nick Saban turns 70 at the end of the month. So I mean, he's in great health, but it's still having him in those kind of situations where the fans are just kind of yeah, you can see it on the screen right here. That's kind of a scary situation for a 70-year-old. I mean, now granted, he had, I don't know if you saw the clip, but he had a police escort just blocking his way. I know one sorority girl got kind of run over by a cop. That's part of it. I mean, like, I feel bad for that girl. Obviously, she wasn't trying to do anything. She was celebrating like the rest of the 100,000 people that were running on there. But I mean, that's also part of the dangers of rushing the field too, is the fan safety. I mean, there's a lot of ways that they can get hurt too. And, I don't think the cop was trying to mow over a sorority girl. It's just, he's going to knock over anything that's in his way, kind of like a, offensive lineman. So, yeah, it was kind of a scary moment. I know A&M got fined $100,000. It wasn't as scary as what was going on in Knoxville over the weekend with, people literally throwing golf balls and also, throwing bottles and, debris onto the field. I mean, there's just no place for that. No matter what the call, there's no place for that in college sports. I mean, you care about these players' safety, both sides, the Ole Miss players and the Tennessee players and the coaches and everybody involved. It's just at the end of it, I know it's more than a game to a lot of people, but it's not worth that. So, I'd like to see the conference kind of crack down on that and, create some safer environments. But what Nick Saban did go on to say, I don't know if he said it there, but, it is an entertainment, so you kind of almost have to expect the fans to celebrate. So running onto the field is not necessarily unheard of. So I don't think it was a situation where he's, totally unprepared for. But it's scary. And then the fact that, he got a bruise. I mean, what happens if somebody had mowed down Nick Saban? You know what I mean?
have been ugly, right?
Being in good health, it doesn't matter if you catch a blind side from someone, you go down bad. I mean, a lot of people could get hurt, not just Nick Saban. But so it's a difficult situation.
Yep. 2000 and I think it was 2002. We ran out on the court in a basketball game when Antoine Petway laid in the game winner against Florida to take the SEC championship game. Alabama doesn't rush the the field in football because, been there, done that. But I've been at other places where they've won big games and ran out on the field years past. So, and it's kind of a tradition in football. I like that. But look at Nick Saban's arm. I mean, I wonder what happened. He didn't say what happened to his arm, did he?
No, I tried to look at some of the video. He trips over something, but I'm not sure he hits his arm when he trips on the video that I saw. But I don't know. You could catch an elbow from someone. You might have gotten an elbow from the police officer escorting him. You never know. I mean, if you're trying to, shield him from someone and you could, catch a jab here or there, it could have been a lot of things.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, he's all right. The old battle axe is still going at it, and said it was motivation. Guys, thanks for hanging out with us here on Monday Night Quarterback. Like and subscribe. Hit the bell on a Monday night on the Bama Insider YouTube channel. He's Tony Tsoukalis. I'm Mick Gillispie. All right, you talked about Tennessee. This week, Alabama plays Tennessee, the annual third Saturday in October game. The SEC was built on this rivalry, believe it or not. And I know that Alabama right now has absolutely dominated. This would be a 15th straight win if they can figure out a way to get it done. 6 o'clock Saturday night in Tuscaloosa. Might be harder than expected. I mean, especially after the way that things went against Texas A&M. But Nick Saban's not taking them lightly. Here's what he had to say today.
I think the rivalry between, Tennessee and Alabama is, one of the old great rivalries in college football. It goes way back. I know it means a lot to a lot of people, in our state. Certainly means a lot to me, and hopefully we'll get that translated to our team. Josh Heupel has done a really good job at Tennessee. Their team is playing really well. They're explosive on offense. They make a lot of big plays. They run the ball very effectively. I don't really think the quarterback situation, regardless of whatever it is, both guys are very capable. They're very similar in style in terms of the way they play. They're big guys, strong arms, accurate passers, and they have the ability to make plays with their feet and run quarterback runs. They have good skill players outside. Their defense is playing, really well. They're mostly a 4-down team, but they do a good job. They've played really well together as a unit, create a lot of negative plays, and they've got good specialists on special teams, and they played extremely well on teams as well. So all the way around, this is going to be a very challenging game for us.
Well, there you go. It's hard to convince people that this is a rivalry. I was at the game in 2006, the last time Alabama lost to Tennessee, but I was also there when Tennessee beat Alabama with Philip Fulmer. I want to say it was like 7 or 8 straight games. Jason Witten and Travis Henry and Jamal Lewis and Peyton Manning and T. Martin. I mean, the Clausens. I mean, it was a tough stretch for Alabama. They were in a very similar situation as Tennessee right now. First off, Tony, how old were you the last time Alabama lost to Tennessee? And what do you think of this rivalry?
So it was 2006. So I would have been a sophomore in high school, So
been a while.
Yeah, it has been a while. I mean, look, Mick, I mean, there's kids that, are in high school right now that have never been alive for a Tennessee win over Alabama, which is crazy. I mean, it's going to get to the point pretty soon, in the next couple of years where Alabama is recruiting kids that have never been alive for a Tennessee win. I mean, already the kids that Alabama's recruiting don't remember a Tennessee win over Alabama because it's, past their memory. But yeah, that is crazy. I mean, I think it's more of a rivalry to the people that remember when Tennessee won. I think the younger crowd, they've never really had to view Tennessee as a threat. So other than, smoking a cigar or, the tradition of the rivalry, it probably has lost a lot of its luster with the younger fans. I think the older fans probably recognize it a lot more. And so I wonder how much these players kind of really recognize the rivalry. I'm sure that they're shown, but also you got a lot of out-of-state guys that might not totally click with this rivalry. It's hard for me to imagine that Bryce Young, I know he talked about it a little bit. Hard to imagine he has much appreciation for this rivalry, because why would he? A California kid, what is he going to know about Alabama, Tennessee? He's never really, seen Tennessee beat Alabama either. So I think maybe to the players that grew up, maybe the Malachi Moores, maybe the, Javion Cohens, yeah, maybe it means a little bit more to them. But even them, they're young and they haven't really seen Tennessee beat Alabama.
Yep. Passionate fan base. Obviously, an embarrassment Saturday at Neyland Stadium. I like Josh Heupel. I mean, I was at the Tennessee-Pittsburgh game. This offense that they're instituting right now is explosive. They had receivers running wide open. That game against Pitt, who's turned out to be a pretty good team. And we saw Milton come at the, who started that game, by the way, and now's the backup, come in at the end of the game against Ole Miss and just botch the finish after Hendon Hooker, the transfer from Virginia Tech. Both guys transferred in, by the way. One from Michigan, and then obviously Hooker from Virginia Tech. But he was hurt. They were moving the ball downfield. Tennessee's kind of been a surprise. They've had to deal with a lot of injuries. They're low on scholarships, but they're improving. They have a style of offense where they like to get a lot of plays in, and that's what they'll bring to Bryant-Denny Stadium on Saturday. I'm guessing that they'll be overmatched by Alabama, but, you got to go out there and play the games. All right, Tony, final question of the night is, what do you think about Alabama moving forward?
Yeah, I think that's the biggest question, because, you thought that they had responded well following the game against Florida. And so you kind of have to take a second look at this win against Mississippi State, because will they really follow it up the way that they need to, or will they kind of, revert back to complacency? If they can keep up this level, moving forward against the rest of these SEC opponents who they should beat. I mean, you got people like, you have Tennessee, then LSU, then, New Mexico State, and then Auburn, Arkansas and Auburn. I mean, all of those you should win, right? I think, you have to bring that same intensity so that when you get to a game like maybe the Iron Bowl, or, Georgia in the SEC championship game, you're ready to go 4 quarters and you're ready to be tested. If you get complacent over these next few games, I think it could really hurt Alabama again. And I think, you'll have to see, it'd be interesting to see how they do respond. You've got guys like Will Anderson that we were talking about. I fully expect those guys to be ready, but there's a lot of young players that are maybe not as concerned about the right things, kind of some of the stuff we saw from Ajay Hall. I wonder if he's the only one that's voicing those kind of frustrations. And if so, if not, then Alabama's leaders have to really nip that in the bud, and really kind of maintain this momentum that they've built against Mississippi State. So it'll be important. This game is probably more important to see how Alabama responds, more so than the final score. Because like you said, I don't really think Tennessee is going to challenge Alabama. But if it's close, or if Alabama comes out sleepwalking, I think that's a really bad sign for things moving forward.
Or if there was a moral victory, if Tennessee plays a tough game against Alabama, and they'll have, transfers next year, and they'll have more players next year. They'll have those extra scholarships, which should be called probably the Tennessee rule, because they had 35 dudes leave. So they'll have, they get extra players next year as far as either being able to sign or transfer in. This program is going to get better. Plus, it's at Neyland Stadium. If you're Alabama, you'd love to just go out there and kind of squash them again, and just mentally put them in a place where they don't feel like they can conceivably beat you.
Yeah. Well, this game is in Bryant-Denny, but next year.
Yeah, next year. Yeah.
If you give him a moral victory, then next year would be in Neyland. So you're right about that. It's just for the rivalry's sake. Look, we've seen streaks end, right? I mean, just this year we saw a former assistant beat Nick Saban, so that should be a wake up call that these things will end one day. One day Tennessee will beat Alabama again. I don't think it's going to be this year, but you got to take every one of these games seriously, because if you don't come out to play, then then you can see what will happen to Alabama. So I just think it's much more of a statement game for Alabama moving forward, in just kind of how they're able to really respond.
Well, Tony, it was fun. That just about does it on Monday Night Quarterback. Tell us what you got going on at Bama Insider and BamaInsider.com.
Yeah, so for tomorrow, Alabama had a really successful night on third down, completing 75% of their third downs against Mississippi State, which is just outstanding, given that they had 16, so they were 12 of 16 against Mississippi State. So I'm going to break down all 16 of those. We'll have gifts and what went right, and on a few of occasions what went wrong. It'll be kind of fun to kind of relive Alabama's success on third downs against Mississippi State. So tune into that for tomorrow morning.
Yeah, no doubt. Guys, don't forget, Monday Night Quarterback is always presented by Westgate Luxury Condominiums, westgateal.com, or you can call them at 855-287-1318, located just steps away from Bryant-Denny Stadium. Exclusive access to the Skygate Club for you and your friends, catered game days, and unparalleled service, luxury condos with high-end finishes and appliances and more. That's where we'll be after the game this week. When you watch us right here on the Bama Insider YouTube channel, we'll be hanging out there. Spacious 1 to 5 bedroom condominiums range from approximately 900 to 3,000 square feet. And they are available now. And I'm telling you, it is an awesome, awesome place to watch a game. Or if you're coming to town and it's not a game day, it's right near the stadium. It's right near the Strip. It's right near campus. It's right near everything. I mean, it's just a perfect location. So it's got it all right there. Don't forget, tomorrow night, it'll be Andrew Bone and Trey Yannity, and they'll bring you the latest on Alabama recruiting. Then on Wednesday, Kyle Henderson and Trey Yannity get back together with the score prediction. On Friday, we'll have the Bama Insider Tailgate Show. That'll be from R&R Cigar. It's a cigar game, so why not do it from Cigar Mansion? And that's what we're going to do on Friday night. 6 o'clock is when all of those shows start. 6 o'clock tomorrow, Wednesday, and then again on Friday. Plus, we'll have all of the press conferences as they happen, and you can watch them on this YouTube channel, Bama Insider. Thank you so much, Tony.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, man. Yeah.
All right, that's Tony Tsoukalis. I'm Mick Gillispie. We'll do it again next Monday at 6 o'clock. Roll Tide, everybody.